Backstage with Mothership on Solid Rock Radio begins now. Hear the best in new music, artist interviews, stories from the road, and more. You are now backstage, and here's your host, Mothership.
Hey everybody, tonight my very multi-talented friend Dee Swan and I talk about faith, making music, and more.
How are you, friend?
I'm doing well.
Is your real name Dee, or is that a nickname?
Actually, that's my stage name. Dee is like a nickname that everybody called me, which I have two childhood names, but that's one of them. And once I transitioned from being in my rock, I was in a Christian rock band, surprisingly. We were signed and we traveled and we toured. And once we kind of took a break from, performing and doing things together, then that's when I started Dee Swan. So it just kind of stuck.
Can you tell us a little bit about your faith journey?
Absolutely. So growing up, my mom, her parents, they kind of raised her and her siblings in a Christian household. My grandpa was very, very great disciplinary for the family, a very strong backbone of family. And my Nana, she was very strong in her faith and believing. So my mom had a balance of both logical and spiritual sides of things. My Nana, one of her things that she always told my grandpa was that, I don't care what my kids do when it comes to career paths and things like that, but if anything, they will know about the Lord. And she was strong on that, and she prayed about it. And I'm kind of a living testimony of her prayer. So as a kid, my mom used to have me go over to my Nana's house, and we'll go to church. I remember watching TBN, and she'll take me to Sunday school and VBS and everything. And those lessons and teachings that I was taught as a kid, it always stayed with me. Mm-hmm. So as I got older, of course, like a lot of people get older, they kind of want to figure themselves out and figure out who they are and understand them. And I drifted away from the church. But again, those teachings never left. I will never forget, it was like my sophomore year. And it's a good friend of mine who opened up his door to me when I was in high school. His name is Andrew. Even in high school, I was still going to like church camps and youth groups and stuff. And I remember laying in my car, and my buddy Andrew, he saw me go in my car and he never saw me leave. Me and my mom was homeless. And by the way, this was parked on the school parking lot. He was like, "Hey, yo, what are you doing? Are you sleeping in your car?" And I was like, he ended up allowing me to stay with him until my mom and I figured out a living situation. And once we did, I never forgot that. So fast forward to college, I remember when I was getting ready to come home to see him for his birthday. I just turned 19. He was getting ready to turn 19, and I didn't hear from him. Long story short, what I find out is that he passed away. We live off of the Mississippi River, so there's a lot of bluffs and cliffs. He was out there with some friends, and something happened to where he fell off and died. My goodness. It took me down a dark path, losing him, and then I lost my uncle around that same time, and he was murdered. It took me down a really dark path, but I remember I was at a party with some friends and family that I knew closely, with some other people that we grew up with. And I remember hearing God speak to me, and he said, like, if you stay in this place, you will never see the full purpose and potential and calling I have in real life. And I swore I thought it was somebody talking to me, but it was God. And he said it again, and I instantly left. And I'll never forget, it was raining, and I was driving back to my mother's house crying. And I talked to my mom about that. I said, "Mom, I want to get saved. I want to be saved. I want to know about God. I have to. There's more to life than this." And since then, I've been running for Jesus. God definitely fulfilled his promise to me, and he's still fulfilling his promise to me. But that's what led me to Christ, was the passing of my buddy Andrew. Like, there were seeds being planted, but he really acted on it.
Amen.
So when he led me into his home, like, he gave me clothes, he gave me food. Yes, it does hurt that he's gone. He's no longer with us. But the time that he was allowed to be on this earth, he showed me an act of love and kindness. And that right there was like everything to me.
Do you feel some responsibility to honor his legacy?
I do, and I feel it all the time. So like whenever I have moments where I feel like I want to quit doing music, I think about the prayers that my Nana had over our family. I think about the sacrifices that my mom made for me to be in this position. And even with him, they all played a pivotal role. He was the key. And so I feel like it's my responsibility to fulfill what I'm supposed to be doing.
You do a lot of things. You're an artist, producer, DJ. You do hip hop, pop, EDM. I mean, you're just like a pot of creativity soup. When did all this start?
So I started doing music when I was 4. And the reason why is because my family will always have like these little karaoke things in the living room, and then what happened was my family found out I could sing. So what ended up happening is that my nana would take me to church and I would sing in the children's choir, and then I advanced up to the next choir level, and then I ended up going into the adult choir. There was a lady at the church that I was attending back home. Her name is Rosalie Keys, a phenomenal singer, and I thank God for her. And she took a liking to me, and she helped me to start learning how to play keys. And she put me in pathways with people who taught music. So I was able to get piano lessons, and I was able to get singing lessons. And then once I got into school, we ended up having an elementary school teacher who was a music major. And also, a third grade teacher and second grade teacher, first grade teacher. And all she would have us do before we start our class was sing vocal warm-ups. Wow. So I was around it so much. And then my uncles used to DJ. That house sound and that hip hop feel was just naturally in us. Like we was just always hosting block parties, and my uncles used to DJ those things. And my aunt, her husband was heavy into rock and roll music, and like bands like Kiss and Def Leppard and bands like that. So I would hear all those like hair metal bands and classic rock bands. And so I took a liking in pieces from all those things. And once I got into junior high, that's when I really dug like into the music, and I started to compete and sing in competitions and choir competitions, and I used to win state awards for that. And I got into musical theater because I wanted to advance my learning of singing and knowing how to dance and sing. And then from learning how to sing and act and dance, good breathing techniques and different tricks and tips that you can use on stage while you're performing all helped polish me. And then by the time I got to high school, I was like really engaged. And then that led me to going further into my musical abilities, because then I was around other talented musicians. And then, and it led me to this path of where I am today. You gave a good analogy, like a soup. Like I have so many different styles of music that I just listened to growing up and being influenced by, that I just try to incorporate that the best that I can in what I do.
Why and when was the move to Nashville?
Honestly, I did not want to move to Nashville. I already knew that Nashville was, music city. Like, so if I feel like I'm not moving in my career of music and living in Nashville would probably make me depressed. So I was like, I don't know if I want to move there. But what happened was my wife, we were out here because we were supposed to have label meetings. It was around the same time there was the bombing that happened in Nashville at the AT&T building. My wife and my mom, what ended up happening was we ended up getting stuck here. And we got invited to a church, actually 2 churches to be exact. We got invited to the Belonging Co. Everyone knows Belonging Co. for their amazing sermons, and they're also their worship team, which hosts the singers Natalie Grant, Danny Goki, Sarah Reeves, just to name a few. Which they're phenomenal. Beautiful service, beautiful word that comes through their ministry. Beautiful people. We went to their service, but then we also visited another church, which is here in Nashville, called Zeal Church. And when we were there, my wife had a spiritual encounter with God. I could see there was a difference in her that day. Wow. And as we traveled back to St. Louis, when we had the opportunity, that's when she expressed to me that, hey, I feel like the Holy Spirit is telling us that we need to move to Nashville. We need to start a family there. We need to serve at that church. Our career paths and our purpose is going to start once we move here. And I can't deny it. Like, that was the Holy Ghost. That was God. That was, God speaking through that woman at that moment. And since we've been here, God has really been showing himself to be true. He's going to be true to the promise. And I've been seeing it. But again, like, I did not want to be here. I felt like Jonah. I said, I didn't want to come here, but God knew I needed to be. So we're here.
Dee, I don't think you had any choice but to go into music. God has just put musicians and people to build all that in you since you were 4. I mean,
well, that's what the word speaks on. Some sow the seed, some plant the seed, but then there's those who water, and that's just what it is. And we see the increase from it. And not everybody's going to be alive to see the increase, but those who are there to witness the increase will know that it's God. who has this hand all over it. And the funny thing about it, I actually went to school to be a youth pastor. That's what I went to school for, because I wanted to go into ministry, and that's what I did.
Well, you kind of are in youth ministry.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy.
Solid Rock Radio is mostly rock and metal. So I don't get to interview artists with different genres and stuff that much, but I feel like hip hop and EDM, I mean, they're nothing like rock and metal, but for some reason in the faith-based market, there seems to be like space that's been made to create and serve alongside each other. Do you have a take on that?
Oh, wow, I do. And you're right. I remember, shout out to all my brothers in my old band, Interflaws. I remember when we were doing our bands, we were like, if Panic at the Disco decided to be Christian and invited Jesus to a party that they hosted, but yet they had friends who were just like into the hardcore metal music and they invited them too, that's exactly what my band was. And I remember we had the same conversation for years. And I remember this one particular conversation we had that stuck with me was that we was trying to play in the churches, but for some reason our music, even though it was light, it was still too heavy to play in the churches. But then since we couldn't play in the churches, there were some venues that felt that we were too light to play with the metal bands. So it was like, what do we play? And that's when this person told me, he said, hey, man, you might be in a room full of other talented people. You got to remember, there's more exits out of that house. It's not just always the front door. It stuck with me. And since then, that's how I look at music in the Christian space is like, yes, we're all in the same house. Our message is all the same. It's about pointing people to Christ. Using music as a tool to point people to Christ. Yes, there's people that's going to walk out the front door. Yes, there's people that's going to walk out the back door. Everybody can't go out the same way.
Somebody's going through the window.
Somebody has to go through a window. And I'm okay with going through the window because at the end of the day, like, our mission is still the same. We're all on the same team. And everybody doesn't listen to Toby Mac and everybody don't listen to Brandon Lake. Not everybody listens to Disciple. Not everybody listens to Red. There's kids who actually want to listen to electronic dance music and they don't have anybody to listen to because all the people they hear are secular. So artists like me, artists like Neon Feather, artists like Matthew Parker, artists like Luke Johns, artists like Capital Kings, like et cetera, Jimmy Rock. It's a whole bunch of us. Artists like us, we're giving kids in that space another option to hear that kind of music. And the funny thing is, I stay getting booked with metal bands because even though we're considered the outcasts in some way by statistics, God ended up using us the most. Like, if you notice in the whole line of the Bible, like, God used the people that nobody saw valuable. A person who was just ordinary somebody.
That's right.
I feel like he's doing that with this genre. I feel like he's doing it, obviously, in, the Christian metal space and hardcore space, and kids are coming to Christ, worshiping in a mosh pit. That's crazy. We've never seen that before. And people are doing it even in the EDM space. And I'll share you a brief story. I don't remember this young lady's name, but I met her recently. And this was at an electronic dance music show. And this young lady just saw me just kind of leaning on the rail, supporting a DJ or a DJ group that I'm friends with in the secular space. I know them very well. And one of the guys, speaking of which, actually got baptized recently. So shout out to you, brother. I love you. Matthew, I love you. Yes. And this young lady just happened to just see me and just started to have a conversation with me. And she asked me, the same questions. What brought me to Nashville? What was my dreams and goals? What is my connection with this person and that person? Then have my turn to ask her the questions. And I said, man, what is your goals and plans for your life? And she said, well, this is what I see. I said, okay, I'm about to get real spiritual with you. Is that okay? And she said, that's fine. I said, so what do you see God has purpose in your life right now? Do you feel like you're walking in it? And if you're not walking in it, then what are the roadblocks that's holding you back from living out your purpose and the calling that God has over your life? And she sat there for a minute and she started crying.
Wow.
And I was like, what's wrong? I hope I didn't offend you. She said, no. I was listening to a sermon earlier today, and they were talking about the same exact thing. And I was asking God this same exact question. Like, what is holding me back from living out my purpose? I just want to have an answer. And then for you to say that, and I just met you, I know this is a God thing.
Wow.
And her friend was trying to get her to leave because she was like, oh, let's go to the bar. Let's do this. And she's like, no. I got to have this conversation. This was preordained. This was something that God designed to happen. I need to hear this. I prayed for her and she left. I don't remember this young lady's name. And that's okay. Again, going back to what we said, it was just meant for me to maybe just sow the seed or maybe to water. But I know she left different that day.
Amen. Let's get into a little bit about your music. A lot of the things you do are mashups and flips, so let's do some defining. What's a mashup?
So a mashup is you're taking two different songs and you're combining them together to make them one brand new spanking song. It could be songs that people are familiar with. It could be songs that people never even heard of. But that's what a mashup is.
So this boggles my mind. How do you know what song will go with another song? Do you just hear it in your head?
That's really, honestly, to be fair, that is exactly what I do. I could be like, God would give it to me. Like, and I really feel that's just God's gift that he's given me. Because I could sit there and listen to someone's song and I would break every little element down from it to where, like, if I hear a band and, you know, you have two guitarists, vocalist, bass player, and drummer, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can literally break down the whole elements of that band to where my ears will only listen to that one instrument.
That's crazy.
I tell you exactly what they played, what cadence they played, what key the song is in, what riff they played.
Do you have perfect pitch?
Hey, I learned that in school. My old professor taught me perfect pitching because you have to learn how to sight read. So he taught me little tips and tricks to help you to know how to know what key a song is in without even seeing it. The sheet music, you could just hear it.
Okay.
So I would sit there when I'm looking at music or hearing music, I'm listening to every little element that's making that song what it is. And I'm infatuated by all those little things. Again, going back to what I was saying earlier with my uncles, they were DJs.
Mm-hmm.
So my taste for that and the sampling and figuring out what works with what is that they was blending records then. They would take a vinyl, put the needle on one song, and they would loop something, take the other song on the other vinyl, and mash it up together to, you know, to blend it. It was kind of already a thing. Like, that's what hip hop is. Like, if you think about it, hip hop, the actual origin of hip hop was the DJ would play the breaks of the songs. And a lot of the breaks that they were taking was from like James Brown and different artists like that. And they'll play the drum breaks and they'll just repeat the breaks. And then they'll switch over to the next record with the same song and make sure that it's playing only the breaks of that record. That's how hip hop was born. So for me, I have to break every element down. And then once I break it down, I try to see, okay, what's similar from this song to this song? What's the difference? How do I make this work? How do I make this blend? What keys are the songs in? Are the keys compatible? And then if I can find the root and the similarity, then I put it together.
That's amazing.
I didn't even start off doing mashups. I wasn't even doing it. It was something that God told me to do actually last year. Like I already knew how to do it, but I wasn't engaged in it until like the end of last year. Because there was a point I felt like I was glitching. I was moving, but I wasn't going anywhere. And then that's when God had to tell me, like, you know, you're trying to move on from something, but you never move forward from it. And you probably heard this before growing up. When something hurts you or offends you, they'll tell you, get over it, move on.
Right.
But they never tell you to move forward. And moving forward and moving on is two different things. God had to remind me, like, you fell out of love with what I've given you. I gave you the gift to make music, and you can make it. But there's things that hurt you along the way that you moved on from, but you never moved forward from them. And it's holding you back from really living out the purpose that I have for you with the gift that I've given you. So what I need you to do is fall back in love with the music again. I know you love me, but I need you to fall back in love with what I've given you. So in the midst of that, I asked for repentance, got myself together, and I went back to the drawing board and got right on that DJ controller. And that's when I started mashing up records. And then from that, it birthed all of this. Here we are.
To complete our education, tell us what a flip is.
So flips is you're taking a record that's already what it is, and you're flipping it to add a different flair to it. A flip would be like if you're listening to one song and it's one key and it's a certain rhythm or a certain pattern, and then midway through the song, it switches to something else. A good example of that would be, the first song that's coming to my mind is Travis Scott. The reason why I say his, because he has a song called Sicko Mode, and that actually has 3 beat changes, but it's considered a flip because he didn't change what he rapped about or what was going on. It just flipped to something else. But that's a good example of that. or beat switch. KB is known for this too. Actually, he's a great example of this. He actually does it pretty often. Yeah, but that pretty much what a flip is. Just you're taking an original content and you're flipping it over into where it's on a different beat, feel, and a different sonic, but everything else stays the same. It's like the equivalent to a breakdown. So like out of nowhere hit a breakdown.
Oh, okay.
It's the same equivalent. Those are actually fun to do live.
When you're using other people's songs, do you have to get permission? Is that an issue?
Actually, it is an issue. If I'm being honest, it really is. So when it comes to like using other people's material, now there's some material that you can use and you don't get flagged for it. The song might be so extremely old or it's not a big artist just yet. But when it comes to like the major artists, the Taylor Swifts or something like that, you can't put out content like that without it getting flagged. They get you every time. So there's songs that I've mashed up and flipped that I've made and videos that I've recorded. I mean, I have a whole like folder full of them that I got flagged, and you guys don't see it on social media. I can still see it.
How many times have you been DMCA'd on YouTube?
A lot. So many times, because Universal could be like, you use this song and it samples this artist, woo woo, or hey, Columbia Records, you use this song which samples this by this artist, you know, and I didn't get no clearance from them, so they take it off. Or it's still there, but y'all can't see it, and I don't get no streams or no views or none of that.
Do they mute it? They demonetize it as well?
They have done that as well. Like, there's been times where a video would start catching flames, like it's starting to catch views,
right?
And then it'll flag them and they'll tell them like, hey, this guy doesn't have the copyrights to this song. They'll mute it to where it doesn't show in certain areas. It's cool because it lets you know like, hey, they're protecting the artist, which is great.
Oh, yeah, that's
so great. If you're making original content, that's great. That means that you're protected. But on the other hand, it takes away the creativity of the person like me who's bringing more light to the original content, because if you hear it and I'm sampling it or doing an edit to it or a mash or whatever, you're going to want to dig deeper to see, okay, what song did he use here? So then it brings you to their content. But it's okay. I totally understand it. It is what it is.
So you've got mashups, you got flips, but you have original music too.
Yes, ma'am. So the music that I make outside of that is all electronic dance music, and in so many different forms. I'll make a bass house record. I can make a house record. I can make a trap house record. But everything is going to be rooted around house music because that's what I grew up on, was Chicago house music. So now that I'm, older, and I got deeper into the house genre, there's so many different styles within house music. So that's what I make. So when people see me perform, a lot of times they go to my social media and they expect mashups all day. Right. And then they actually hear that, oh, he has his own music. Oh, he actually sings. He actually have live instrumentation too. He's mixing right in front of me. So it's kind of a thing that I want to bring awareness to, like, we're here. God can be in this too. Yeah, that's what I really make. It's electronic dance music.
Yeah. Well, it was good to see your set at Kingdom Come Festival. And then it was good to see you on main stage during the changeovers.
That was awesome. Like, shout out to them, because I know that was something new for them to try. Because what even gave them the spark to do it was the first year I came, I actually brought my buddy Jay Horton, and he was DJing for me, and I was performing all my original singing. Yeah. Which Jay Horton actually DJs for the artist Paul Russell, which he has that song Boo Thing.
Oh yeah, I've heard Boo Thing. That's on a lot of TikToks and things like that too.
He DJs for him. That's a whole nother story. How God moved him there. Like, me and him talked about it before God moved him there, and I said, hey, God's gonna move you into these spaces, and now he's doing it. So he came with me my first year. But the second year I came, I could not sing because I had dental work.
I remember that.
And my dentist told me, like, if you sing, you're going to come back and see me because I'm going to have to do more work on your mouth again. So what I ended up doing was I ended up DJing. And I said, you know what? I'm going to actually DJ. I'm going to actually play records that I love, songs that I've made, edits that I made, mashups that I've made, and I'm going to perform them. Because I've already agreed to do the show. But I didn't know the dental work that I was going to get done was going to keep me from singing. So I did that. And I got so much good feedback from that. Miss Angie and her team for this year asked me to come back and do that, but throughout the days where I'm DJing on certain days and still perform my original content.
Win-win.
So, yeah. It was her first time asking me, Miss Angie, was this just like an idea, I guess, that came in her head and that team's head? It was actually fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. I think you found a permanent gig there, Dee.
I'm totally interested in doing it again if they allow me.
That would be great. I know you did something with Liam Payne and cheat codes recently. Can you kind of give us a quick overview of some of the stuff you got that you want people to listen to?
Since you brought that record up, Liam Payne, for those who don't know, Liam Payne is a member of the popular boy band called One Direction. They're pretty much the boy band of this generation, and I had the honor and privilege to do a song and remix a record for them with my buddy Greg. And we had a great time doing that record. And the guys in the group, Cheat Codes, which those are a lot of my good friends, and actually one of the closest group that I'm like really connected to in electronic dance music that's not Christian. And we have a lot of spiritual conversations all the time, prayer. And like I said, one of the guys in the group actually got baptized. So it's just having those relationships with those people were great. And of course, I'm also in an electronic dance group called Holy Rave with my buddy Neon Feather, which he's done a lot of remixes for a lot of Christian artists within the Christian space. And then I'm working on new material as well. Outside of the music, I also run playback audio. So what that is that if you were to go see an artist perform and say, for example, there's a guitarist, bass player, drummer, and singer, and they're performing the song, but while you're seeing them perform the song, you hear string instruments being played or a brass section being played or these crazy synth pads being played, but you don't see a keyboardist up there. There's somebody running those sounds. That's what a playback person is. They're the person who is making sure those tracks are running properly so that the performance is at the highest level that it can be. So what I do, I actually get hired to go on the road or do shows or one-offs or whatever. And I go out on the road and run these tracks for these artists. My client that I run the tracks with the most, his name is Blessing Offer, and his story is phenomenal. He's a Christian artist, and he's Grammy nominated too. And he's got some amazing music. He's pretty much the Christian Stevie Wonder for us.
Oh, I love Stevie Wonder. I'm going to have to check him out.
I had a privilege to work with him and his team, and I've been able to go on the road with him. And one of our tours that we done, we was doing stuff for Lauren Daigle. And everyone knows Lauren Daigle. She's amazing. And I had a privilege and honor to be on the road with him, with her, and Lauren is a beautiful soul. I love her. And outside of them, I work with other artists that I run playback for as well. That's what I do. And of course, I do production for people as well.
Do you have any upcoming shows or tours or anything that people should know about?
Well, if Lauren Daigle is coming to a city near you, you probably see me on that tour supporting the opening artist, Blessing Offer. Got a couple of gigs where I'm DJing, but I have a project that I am working on with a good friend of mine, and I can't speak on it so much right now, but we have some songs we're sitting on. I'm so excited to get those things moving. So be on the lookout for that for sure.
One last thing before we go. 1 Corinthians 13:13 is on the bottom of your website. Tell me why that is your verse.
So back home in St. Louis, I remember at that time just being talked to about, marriage and everything like that. And I remember the pastor who was helping me and my wife through the counseling for all that, he would have me go and read 1 Corinthians, the 13th chapter, in its whole entirety every day. He told me to read it every day. And every time we have a session, he said, what does this verse mean? What does this verse mean? What does this verse mean? And then when it got to the 13th verse, he asked me, what does this mean? And then he asked me, what does the whole chapter mean? And it's really rooted in love. So the 13th verse, it says, and now these three remains, faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. And God is love. So the greatest thing that we have is love. Faith is great. Hope is great. But love is the greatest. And it stuck with me. And it made me think of what God called me to do. And that was to make music that was going to glorify him and bring people together in unity and love. that will help them glorify the Father, which is in heaven. I put that on my website too, because when people who aren't believers scroll and look through my website, they see that verse. And when they go and look it up, they're going to see that love is the greatest gift that God has ever given us, because he gave his son, because he loved us, as a sacrifice for all of us to have a chance to get to know him. That's the reason why that verse is there.
Well, amen. Well, I guess that sums everything up. Love you, Dee, and I hope to see you out on the road.
Yes, ma'am. I appreciate you. Love you too, Mothership. And I hope to see you guys very soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for more great music and check out my blog page on the Solid Rock Radio website for my guests' social media links. If you've missed any of my past interviews, you can find them uploaded to podcast.solidrockradio.org. Have a wonderful week, and let's be kind to one another.